During the training, it was just strict regimen, structured routine. You go to chow at 5 o'clock. You're seated in the tables with your hands on your knees. You make one wrong move, lift your hand a different way or whatever, you're getting screamed at. So it was just very, very structured. Welcome back to the Men's Podcast. If you're new here, my name is TimBohner. I was born in poverty near the dumps of Guatemala, but I was given a second chance at life, and now I'm on a mission to awaken men in this generation. Too many men have become complacent, so often forgotten who they are. I hope to inspire men to take ownership of their health, family, and lead their kids by example. Go to 317wellness.com to get started on your fitness journey. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Men's Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about my experience in Marine Corps basic training. This was about 14 years ago, 2010. I joined in January the 12th, 13th of 2010. So before we jump into it, guys, it's been a long day. Almost didn't film this podcast because I was pretty exhausted, worked 9 hours so far today. Then I was just like, you know what, we got to get this done, get this video uploaded, because we've been consistent with one video a week for almost 3 years. There might have been like a week or two that I might have missed, but it's been very consistent and I have to get this done. So we're going to be talking about my experience. The reason why I decided to join the Marines is because I did not want to go to college. That was the last thing I wanted to do. I hated school, was barely getting by, getting C's, and I also was getting D's as well. Almost failed a couple classes, but I decided to join the Marines also because of my brother who was in the service while I was getting ready to join. Talked to him for a little bit and asked him how his experience was. He was, I believe, was in Okinawa when I was talking with him, but he was traveling all over the world, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. And you know, he was also traveling to Australia. He was going different places that I wanted to go to. So that sounded kind of fun. And I also knew that joining the Marines was going to be the best decision because of just my mentality at that time. You know, I was just fresh out of high school. I was on the wrestling team, which developed a lot of discipline in my mind. So I knew that the Marines was going to be the baddest branch to go into. Didn't know much about it. Didn't go to any ROTC training, or I didn't have any experience before I went in, other than just talking to my brother. And I remember asking him how it was, and he was just like, just be ready to be broken down. He was just saying, they're going to break you down. And I was like, okay, I don't know what the heck that means, but I guess I'll experience when I get there. And boy, did I experience it as soon as I got there. But before we get into that part, so we graduated high school, and it wasn't until a year after until I actually went in. So that whole year I was working a job. I remember working at Culver's during the time that people were going to college that were in my grade. I was just working as a fryer at Culver's, pretty much hating my life at that time, just because I wasn't doing anything at that time other than working, hanging out with friends, partying a lot. So finally, that day came. Had to go to MEPS and do all that. MEPS was freaking long. I barely remember all that. Barely remember what happened during that time, other than just a lot of testing, a lot of, I guess, physical tests that I had to do. So it was a long day there. And then the day finally came. Headed off to San Diego, California, which was where basic training was for the Marine Corps. And I remember we had to go to 3 different flights. I really don't remember the details. It's such a long time ago, but man, I remember just kind of nervous meeting some of the guys that were there. Some people were going into a different branch, but we all got to San Diego, and man, I don't know why I can't remember all the details. Maybe I was just so freaked out that this was going to be a new experience, that this was going to be something that I was going to step into, have no idea what was going to happen. So it was probably more like a shock state that I was in, that I don't remember all the details from getting from, I guess it was Indianapolis. I think that's where I flew out of, to San Diego. So, but anyways, I do remember getting on the bus, and as we're driving there, bus driver was telling us we got to put our heads down between our legs. And that's when it started kicking in with me. I'm like, okay, I've seen this before, because I did do some research before and like what would happen leading up to that. So we had our heads down in our knees, and my legs were kind of shaking up and down. And I'm like, all right, here we go. And the instructor comes in, and then boom, he was just like, everyone get off the freaking bus. It's time to go. Get off, and just screaming and yelling. And I was like, oh shit, here we go. Grabbed our stuff, rushed out of the bus, and then there was like 3 or 4 drill instructors right outside the bus screaming at you. And they're like, get on the freaking yellow footprints. Hurry up right now. It was just intense. And I was just going with the flow. Ran up to the yellow footprint, and they were just going crazy. You could barely understand what they were saying because they were screaming at the top of their lungs. And I'm just following the crowd, have no idea what was going on. Finally, we all get situated. One of the probably officers comes out and just speaks about just the whole chant when you first get on the yellow footprints, just the whole whatever you call it. But then they rushed us out into, I guess, the receiving area. And, we're all lined up going in, literally back to back. And the drill instructors were still screaming, yelling, and having us chant back. At that time, I had no idea that we were supposed to respond like with yes, sir, aye, sir. This is where things just started getting crazier, because one of the drill instructors realized that I wasn't doing that. I wasn't responding back with yes, sir, aye, sir. And he ended up grabbing me from the crowd. And he was screaming at the top of his lungs at my face, and he was just saying, when I say aye, sir, you respond with aye, sir. And I was like, aye, sir. I was just freaking out because I had not experienced it ever in my life. So they ended up taking me to, just separated me from the platoon, or from the recruits. And another drill instructor comes up, screaming in my face, telling me to raise up my duffel bag up and down. This lasted for like 10 minutes. Them telling me to scream, aye, sir. And I was just drenched in sweat, pouring just sweat down my eyes. And in my mind, I was just trying to understand, why in the world did I sign up for this? Why am I here? I was just like, all of a sudden, just like, this is stupid. Like, why would anyone sign up for this? So eventually they stopped and told me to get back in the line. And then got back in the line, and I realized that you need to respond when they talk to you. And we just moved on into just unloading our equipment, or not our equipment, unloading our bags into this like red little, like, I don't know, it was like a red stand that you it's like a little cubby that you would just unload. Everyone was just next to each other, just unloading their stuff. The drill instructor's still yelling, you have this and this and this. Moved on to phone booth. They're still screaming at you. They're telling you that you got like 30 seconds to go make a phone call to your family, let them know that you're okay. And you had a little piece of paper that you had to actually read on, like a script that you had to read on as soon as you get to the phone booth. But at the same time, you have a drill instructor screaming in your face. So I didn't even dial. I was just so like confused what was going on. So I was pretending I was talking and reading the script because they were just in such a rush that you didn't have time to do any of that. So finally moved on, shaved our heads from that point on. And man, it's just crazy to be in that environment. Like, your whole life completely gets flipped upside down. Everything that you've known outside of the base is just like completely gone, because they do break you down. They try to change your habits, try to change the way that you speak, the way that you talk. Everything was changed. So when they're talking about like a door, you call a door. You start changing the terms. You start changing. You call a door actually a hatch in the Marines. So, and I remember I think it was like Black Friday, I forget what it was called, is where you meet your drill instructors, you get your platoon, and this is where you're left off from the receiving process. So you get to your squad bay, and on the first day you meet your officer and your drill instructors, and they're just going crazy, even crazier than getting off the bus, yelling and screaming 10 times more and in your face more, and you're just like, what the heck? More screaming and yelling. So from that point on, the first night of waking up, you're up like at least 4 o'clock, I believe. I don't remember exactly. During the receiving time, I forgot to mention this part. During the receiving time, you were up like for 48 hours. They were trying to just wear you down to the point where you couldn't function because they wanted to break everything about you. They wanted you to just be in a brainwashed state so that they could just instill their new habits in you. So the first time you get in there, you're up for like 48 hours. It was crazy. You're just exhausted. A lot of recruits were just nodding their heads off during some of the class meetings during that receiving week. You're just nodding your head trying to stay up, and if you're caught sleeping, they're in your face screaming like, wake up, get up, stand up, burpees, whatever they were saying. But back to the actual training. You were up at 4 a.m. the first day. They're freaking screaming in your face. You just have to adapt. And there are a lot of people in there that didn't belong in there. There are a lot of people that were, I would say, pretty soft because they're just dropping like flies. A lot of recruits just dropping and pretty much quitting, wanting to go home. And that's pretty much what they were trying to do, is just send people home that aren't able to handle that environment. So I remember there's one kid in there that I met later on during the time that I was there that had jumped off the second balcony, and I believe he was either trying to commit suicide or he was just trying to get out. But it got pretty intense in there, that there were people in there trying to commit suicide. So it got pretty bad at times. During the training, it was just strict regimen, structured routine. You go to chow at 5 o'clock. You're seated in the tables. You're seated on tables with your hands on your knees. You make one wrong move, lift your hand a different way or whatever, you're getting screamed at. So it was just very, very structured. The training was pretty easy. The physical stuff was pretty easy for me because I was a short guy. I'm 5'1", and I was an easy target. So they ended up picking me along with some other guys that were short, and we were called the house mice. So what that meant was that we would be the ones that would have to be cleaning the officers' squad bay. So all the house mice from all the platoons would have to go to the officer's office and clean their whole area. I remember a bunch of us going down there one time, and when you get there, you're marching together. When you get there, you're lined up in a row. One of us has to go and knock on the door, and none of us wanted to do it. I'm like, freak. I was like, shit. I was like, one of us has to do it. Every time we went down there, one of us had to knock on the door and say, this recruit, just the proper language that you had to use when you're speaking to an officer. And this was pretty intimidating because these are guys are higher level. So every time, no one wanted to do it. And I was like, you guys are a bunch of scared girls, because no one stepped up. I stepped up every freaking time and went and knocked on the door. And every time I got chewed out. Somehow I would get chewed out. But, I think that a lot of the officers in there respected me for being the one to step up. And because I was short but stocky when I was in there, even my drill instructors in the squad bay would have respect for me. You know, they don't want to show respect to you, but I believe that they respected me because I was a hard worker. I was fast. I was there. I was boom. I was acting fast. And one of the drill instructors wanted me to be the squad bay leader, which is the guy that marches with the flag in front of the platoon. The squad leader is the one that's in the middle of, pretty much the middle of the whole squad bay, who has the rack in the middle. It pretty much shows that you're the one that's leading the squad bay. Me, the 5'1" guy, they asked me to do it. And I said no because I was scared. I just didn't know how to be a leader at that time. I knew that the drill instructors respected me because of just how I carried myself and because I was in shape and small. So they were kind of looking at me like, you look really weird and awkward. You look strong, but you're super short. But anyways, yeah. So, and another way that I stood out during that time was because of my last name. My last name is Bonner, which is a German name. I was adopted, so my name got changed. So now my last name is Bonner. So obviously they're gonna make fun of you if your name looks like that. They were calling me Boner. Boner is what I heard the whole time I was there. I guess during that time, it was just, I got a lot of experience with being messed with. I got a lot of experience with being with the high level officers in there. Got experience just bleeding the house mice, I guess is what you'd call us. So this whole experience was something I will never forget. You know, I went through some challenging moments during basic training. And there's a lot more to uncover in this story, which I will save it for a different podcast. If you're thinking about joining the military, you got to be prepared mentally, mostly. Physically, yes, you have to be physically fit, but it's a lot of mindset games in there. You have to really be mentally strong going in because they will break you down, especially in the Marines. They will try to make you quit. That's what it is. They want you to quit. They want to take the weak men out and keep the strong men in. So if you're not mentally strong, I don't recommend joining the Marines. You can join the Army, or you can join the Air Force or Navy. I've heard they're not as intense. Army's probably the second intense, I'd say, but Air Force and Navy, probably not. So if you think about joining, definitely be ready to be screamed at. Definitely be ready to be messed with. They'll find something to mess with you. So I'll make another episode talking about the second part of my experience in basic training where I did get hurt and just the next chapter of that story, because yeah, it was definitely a long journey in basic training. I almost spent a year in there, almost a year in basic training because I got hurt. So we're going to cut that story short. We're going to save it for the next one. But thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.